I see that we're live. And the Hawaii.
Okay.
Okay, now I can hear you. I was like, I couldn't hear Hawaii.
Yes. Hello, everybody. This is Janet Careless. Okay, looks like we're coming back. Sorry about that. I'll start over. Hello, everybody. I'm Janet Lessin, and
she's back.
Reverend Devi Grace. She's a happy person. And I'm broadcasting from Maui, Hawaii. So sometimes the connection's weird, so I had to switch my internet connection. So hopefully this will sustain us for the whole. We're going to broadcast for about an hour. So without further ado, I'm going to let Reverend Devi Grace introduce herself. We just met on the phone about a week ago, and there's a lot we're going to learn from each other. Go ahead, introduce yourself. Take it away.
Hello. I am the founder of both the Divine Union Academy and the Divine Union Foundation, which is basically set up to restore the core value of the sacred marriage for this earth and her people. I'm a member of the International Association for Near-Death Studies, and I'm also a member of the Galactic Alliance, and also a member of Beyond Being Human because of my experience with near-death experiences, end-of-life reviews, walk-ins, hybridization, which is basically the transfiguration or metamorphosis of our species into the human divine. My specialty and emphasis is really on this embodiment of our multidimensionality and how that works in partnership with nature and the biosphere. So we're very much into the ancient lineages of the Divine Mother and the Divine Father as primordial consciousness. So I really represent the Maha Tantra, which is that original sacred sexual union of the source energies, which we have modeled in all of these different mystery schools as the creator and the creatrix, and yet in quantum physics, right? It's the two primal strands. And I have this background in morphogenetic field physics, and so I can speak that language of the left brain, or I can also speak the language of the right brain, which is akin to the great legends of evolutionary love and how these junctures cooperate, right? You have technology on the one side and you have the consciousness on the other side, or the yin and yang, and the ancient Taoists spoke of that tri-wave energy. So I'm always working with both the masculine and the feminine and their coherence of their amalgamation, which is alchemy. So I'm an alchemist, and we focus on how does that sacred sexual alchemy serve our own integration with our own spirit and our own bodies, and how that supports the grid lines or the life force, right? Or the meridians or the ley lines moving through the whole planet. So it's as much a personal awakening process as much as it's also in service to awakening the highest expression of the whole planet, the planet's destiny. So that's just what's coming through today.
That's a lot of words. Yeah. So I think what these are all shows in themselves. Everything you just said, we could do a whole show on. So what I want to do is I invited you. I mean, and a lot of these concepts are over people's heads, and we need to unpack it and apply definitions and allow our audience to ask questions. And then so I'm gonna raise my finger when it's like I'm getting a good question or a good point to pause. You might want to take notes. You can. I don't know. I always write notes where I left off so I can pick it back up again. You might have a better memory than I do. But at this point,
spontaneous and free flowing. Yes.
Yeah. So we're going to free flow. So I'm going to launch and welcome everybody for joining us today. This is exciting. This is our first live stream, so forgive me for my awkwardness, but I'm just learning this new system here, and I'm very excited because we are live broadcasting on 8 different platforms right now. And then when we're done, I want to introduce real briefly my co-host, and she's here.
Hello.
I don't know if she can speak. Can you speak? Yeah. So TJ and I have been doing these. So we have over 1,000 broadcasts. We've been interviewed by hundreds of people. We've been in this consciousness field since 80s. We're old people. I'm on my last year, my 60s. Teresa's in her 70s. So anyway, Teresa's here in an assistance role today, but we're going to mainly let Devi do her presentation. So just wanted to say hi to Teresa. Say 2 seconds. Do you have something you want to say to our audience?
Oh, thank you.
Okay,
yes.
no.
Hi, Reverend Devi Grace. Nice to meet you and everybody here. Thank you, Janet, for including us in Florida in the United States of America. So welcome, everybody. Hopefully this will grow for all 3 of us ladies in the future, doing more of these. So thank you. I'll be here, and whenever you need me, I'll ask a question.
Okay, I'll ask you to go off mute. So if you could mute, because I know your doggy sometimes barks, so we don't want to disturb our presentation. Okay, and here we go. I'm going to add the presentation. And I know I have it uploaded. Here it is. Okay, so we're going to step back, and you're going to take it away. And then when like I said, when I have a question, I'll put my finger up, and I'll ask you to kind of pay attention to that. And then I'm going to pay attention to the chat. So everybody out there, if you have something, comments or questions, and if they're relevant to what we're discussing at the moment, I will pause and take your question. Okay, take it away. Thank you.
Okay, well, I would just like to also share that I'm on the West Coast. I'm in the mountains of Southern California next to the Pacific. So between all 3 of us, we have the Atlantic and the Pacific and then the Hawaiian Islands. And so my presentation is really all about parapsychology, except it's applied to the whole planet. And before I start discussing more of my own experiences, I'm going to introduce 8 concepts or 8 themes through these 9 slides, just to kind of give us a baseline of the translation or the definition of some of these terms that I was bringing up in the original welcoming communication. So we can go to the next slide. And I speak through the language of image. So you will see with each slide that there's a picture, and that speaks to your right brain. So even if I'm using terminology that you've never come across before, trust that you can get this all through the image. That's how the dolphins communicate. That's how the horses communicate. So language is our left brain, and it's not our only way of receiving awareness or consciousness. So this image is this beautiful tree that for me is a symbol of tantric planetary awakening. And if you can see at the base of the trunk, there's a man and a woman. And this is presencing that there is this cedar miracle, this original holy union of every sacred feminine and every sacred masculine principle that dwells within this one quantum original living tree of life. And a lot of you have heard of that ancient term. And as we go through this awakening process, it's birthing into the tree of love or into the tree of grace. And as you can see, there's all these rainbow energy fields, right, pouring through that beautiful pillar that connects heaven and earth. And so when we're talking about the sacred marriage, we're really not talking about a man and a woman. We're talking about the archetypes of the divine feminine in its entirety and the archetype of the divine masculine in its entirety, and what they make possible, right, when they make love and form that tree that merges, spirit and matter. So that's what that whole picture is saying. Next.
Okay, so you're not able to forward. I'll do it for you, but I didn't know if you had the ability to click on the next slide. It's not showing on your end.
No, I wish.
I don't know.
Sorry.
They're probably afraid to do that, but I didn't do it right. Okay, proceed.
We're still learning. So this is a
Yes.
painting from a friend of mine down in Mexico, Ricardo. And I asked him to show the lovers, right, in the forest. And yet, when you look at that man and woman, connect that picture of the feminine with Mother Earth or Pachamama. And in the masculine side, connect it with how you relate to Father Earth, also known as Pachatata, right, down in South America or Peru. And so this is a much bigger field of Tantra. And our ancient ancestors knew about this because we had annual gatherings, right, where we would honor at Lake Titicaca the union of Pachamama and the union of Pachatata, right? They had the temples on either side of the lake. And so these were big, primordial, right, love energies. And so this is nature's holy union. And Gaia Sophia, that's another name for Mother Earth, has her divine planetary counterpart, which some people call the Green Man. And he is referred to as the universal king of the earth. And right now they are literally receiving their joint Maha Tantra, which is a walk-in, right? Where their greater love is walking into the body of the planet. And this is actually grounding as an interdimensional soul merge, right? Between like Father Sky and Mother Earth, right? On many different levels. And this is how planetary bodies awaken to their own interstellar beloved, right? Which is like the soul of the planet merging with the physical body of the planet. And this is known as multi-dimensional ecosystems, right? So we have earth and we have air and we have fire and we have water, right? And then we also talk about that fifth element, which is the spirit molecule. So in some sense, this is like the fifth element of the sacred marriage of the divine feminine and the divine masculine up in the heavens. And it's also now pouring down, drenching, right? Lavishly loving the planet, which is the material plane, to receive this communion, the Tantra in the above and the Tantra in the below. Next.
Okay. I do have a couple questions. So
Yes.
you're saying that that the divine lovers. See, I think of them as Nima and Enki, and Enki is the Anunnaki, Father
Yes.
Creator God, and Nima is the Mother Creator Goddess, and they brought Tantra to this plane, to humanity, in order to allow us to wake and become conscious, because there were other forces that wanted us to stay unconscious. So
Yes.
anyway, so and notice how they're sitting in Yabyang, and then they have their feet, so they're grounding. They have their feet on the earth. Yeah. Okay. Next slide. Thank you.
It's exactly what you're talking about, right? It's just taking those two beloveds that you mentioned, right, and multiplying it. So this original Maha Tantra is every manifestation of the goddess, right? She of 10,000 names, and every manifestation of the god, he of 10,000 names, so that every culture and every civilization and every tradition feels included in their partnering, so that, you know, no lineage or one tradition doesn't feel that that symbol and remembrance isn't available to us, because we all have different names, right?
Right. And when you work on yourself, and that goes into the morphogenic field, into the grid, you actually do work for the whole planet, and vice versa. Everybody can help each other on this superconscious level to become conscious.
Yes, and so it's like you see this little couple, right? That's at the base of this huge, magnificent tree. And so that basically is a picture of what Janet just said, that when we do this tantric work with ourselves, inside of ourselves, and on ourselves, it is naturally, osmotically shared with the body, right, of the whole planet. And one of the Gnostic scholars is John Lamb Lash. He's from Nemata, which is the school of the Sophianic arts and sciences. And he found these ancient scrolls that were written in the language of the Dakinis, right, from Tibet. And he coined that the ancients were mentoring the human race in this practice called planetary Tantra, or he called it Gaian Tantra. And then he related that to these ancient practices of Shaktiism, right? So that's the embodiment of the goddess. And so this is one of his quotes from his work. Planetary Tantra is a path of interactive magic with Gaia Sophia, an intimate way to engage the supernatural powers of the divine feminine in every aspect of life, love, and destiny. It is the way of direct access to the spontaneous arising Dakini wisdom, as it is called in Tibetan Tantra. Planetary Tantra is rapturous immersion through the desire and imagination and the dreaming power of the earth, right? So it's that personification of Gaia as a real woman, a real goddess. And it's the most intimate way of bonding with the planetary animal mother, known as Gaia. So in his traditional representing of these ancient practices from modern times, we're rediscovering what planetary Tantra means for us today. And of course, we have the practices of our ancestors that came before us and how they connected their own divine erotic energy with the beauty and the bounty of the entire natural world. We're also realizing that our species is going through, that quickening process of moving more into our cosmic bodies and more into our galactic bodies. And so how is this expanding our definition for how we can make love, right, to our multidimensionality, and also feel that into what we would call the circuits or the grid lines, right, of this awakening web or weave of life that's happening through the prana or the chi or the life force that's now swimming, right, through all of the elements and all of the ecosystems. So planetary Tantra today is way more active than it was, quote unquote, like 5,000 years ago, because we have all of this photonic energy, right, from the sun and the great central sun that's just pouring, right, like a waterfall into our biosphere. So we're taking that original practice and then we're surrendering to see how it can continue to develop and expand.
Do you have to have a partner to do this? You're showing couples. Can this be a solo practice? And how would you recommend
Yes,
people?
the solo practice can be done in surrogation, right, through the purity of our intent. And so Carl Jung has this language of the anima and the animus, right? And so I've gone out into the forest alone, not with another person, and I called in my energetic divine counterpart, right, which is my internal animus. And for men, it's the anima. And I basically ask, right, for that own reflection of my equal and equivalent soul energy field, because the planet knows who I am in my wholeness, right? And it's a vibrational like prayer or invocation. And that's why the ancients use that metaphor of the tree, because we each come with these, two facets, right? Like the ring has both the gem and also the setting. So kind of like the feminine, Shakti presence will always illuminate that eternal spark. And then our masculine energy is giving it that grounded anchoring, that grounded structure, that grounded rooted presence, so that spirit that we are, right, can completely connect with matter. So it really doesn't matter what your gender is, right? You can go out into, your backyard and sit your tailbone down onto the grass, right, and start moving that pranic energy through your central channel and basically remember your own wholeness. So it's not necessarily a logical decision, it's a heart decision, that I'm remembering that I am made of this fabric of both the masculine and feminine energies. And in that remembrance of my wholeness, then of course I can allow this to stream through me or swim through me because of my openness, right, to the fullness of who I am.
Okay. Next slide.
Yeah.
Okay. I wish you could do it, but I'll fix it for the next time. I'll figure it out. Thanks for my learning curve. Being patient. Okay.
And so this is now
you have the
from
next slide?
the Alchemists. Yes, this is from the Alchemist perspective, right? And so this slide is talking about part of our original temples of love, like Kathleen McGowan talked about the book of love. And so Iona Miller is basically giving us what we would call the mystery traditions, right? And this is specifically the Rosa Mundi, right? And it's a Rosa Mundi with our Mother Earth. The great mother of us all includes the earthly goddess as Gaia, as the light of the divine womb, primal source, and the mystery of divine light that informs and transforms into matter. That's it in a nutshell, right? Same thing over and over again. The combined enigmatic beauty and deeper mystery of the Rosa mystics has captivated lovers, artists, poets, shamans, cultural alchemists, and philosophers for thousands of years. Thus, we have a medieval lineage of the feminine that arose with a persistent theme of gender reunion, right? These male and female principles in the great rite, right? The Hieros Gamos of the ancient bloodlines, mystical eroticism known as the royal marriage. Therefore, Carl Jung made sure that he wrote a very large book and transmission with the title describing the separation and synthesis of psychic opposites in alchemy. So I know that's a mouthful. And what it's basically saying is that we are primordial consciousness. We have our human personality, right? And we have our soul. And as we begin to surrender and open up into the mystery of our spirit, we will remember that our spirit is made of these ancient primordial energies of love and divine lovers. And so when we came into this free will experiment, right, it looked like we individuated into masculine expressions and into feminine expressions, except we always came with that original blueprint of wholeness, regardless of your gender. So even if you incarnated in a female body, right, you still have access to your masculine soul. And even if you incarnated in a masculine body, you still have access to your feminine soul. And the part of you that's the spirit, right, is the non-dual, which is that third force, right, which is why it's a tri-wave, right? The original state of integration. So it's not just yin and yang. The Taoists or the Lemurians referred to it also as that original third spark, which is yun. So the three primal forces. And that is the original commitment that we're made of the fabric of love. And even if it looked, right, like the illusion of separation, the alchemist will always see it through the lens of the original state of wholeness or union, because it's doing that dance, right, of the exhale into individuation and the inhale back into amalgamation. So this is that undulation, right, of that orgasmic wave energy, because that's how it got generated, right? It went into the diversity so it could, right, return to the oneness and that whole flux, right? That's the pulse. And that's what the alchemists are talking about, if that's an easier translation.
Great. Anybody have any comments or questions out there? The chat, I don't know if the chat's working. Could someone test the chat for me and type something in to see if it's working? Anyway,
But we have
you.
people calling in from
slide?
Southern California, and yeah, we're ready for the next slide, because I know a lot of people are going to catch the replay.
Yeah, they will. And we have 1, 2, 3, well, yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people live right here.
Can you hear me, Janet?
Yeah. Yes.
I noticed I could talk to you in the chat, but the comments weren't on. So I'm not sure if that's on another button for you.
Let me see. Let me see if I have a setting here. Oh, here we go. Okay. So yes, you're commenting. Missy said hi.
That's the Horvath.
Hi. Okay.
Hello.
And we all have our code names. All right. So anybody have any questions or comments? I can now see it, so I can ask
I'd just like to mention, Janet, that Iona Miller has passed away, and I'd like to know how Reverend Devi Grace got familiar with Iona, because she is Dr. One of our colleagues in parapsychology and metaphysics with me and Janet. Janet, Iona that she's quoting here is Dr. Richard Allen Miller's wife, past wife.
Yes. That was Iona Miller was
our colleague's wife at one time. Okay, she worked with Janet and I.
Well, that's another confirmation, right? Alchemists find each other.
Yes.
Because of her realization of like the trans-dimensional, multi-dimensional healing of the whole human race. She got it at the macro level of wisdom. And so I've loved her materials for years.
Wonderful.
Just adore her. Yeah.
I just wanted
not to mention her artwork collection. So we appreciate her supporting us right from the other side now.
And I put her, just so you know, Reverend Devi Grace, I do promote her on my channels. I have.
Oh, perfect.
You bet. All right, I'm going to mute.
Another confirmation.
Richard Allen
Miller. I'll promote him as well.
Richard Allen Miller. I just remember the name. Richard Allen Miller. That's who she was. Were they married when she passed, or
yes.
they separated her? Do you remember?
They were.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Enough of that.
He didn't remarry. But she is very well known in our society, in our spiritual community, in our metaphysical community, in our intelligence community. She worked with us in the government, contractors. She worked in the human resource area where we employed others in the global consciousness. But brilliant woman, and I'm sure that he's glad that she is part of our community, because her husband, it was very much a leader at our highest levels and has many authored books, and they were a very good couple. But I love the fact that Janet, we can talk later in parapsychology about her. But yeah, she's passed over this last, Janet, you remember when we were doing Dr. Richard Allen Miller? So I believe it was 2021, November 2021, or maybe 2022. Yeah. So back to you, Dr. Grace. I just wanted to mention that she has passed over, but she is with us in spirit, as we all are, because we all keep going. So back to you in human form and discussing reality.
Well, we appreciate, her presence. I'm quoting these people and including, really their magnum opus, and the legacy of her work is astounding. So this quote is from my other soul sister who's in Sedona now, Sandra Walter. And she's referencing, as you can see through this artwork, how this relates, right, to the morphogenetic field, right, which Rupert Sheldrake spoke of, that fabric of that intelligence that is that vibrational coding that is through every animated object in the whole planet, right, whether it's a butterfly or a human being. And she wrote that ancient wisdom referred to the womb and pelvic region as the gateway to the god-goddess source. This energy unveils the portal to the creator and creatrix, of course, within us all. And it connects us to both our root and sacral chakras, which have remained the two biggest vaults to stored and carried ancestral, right, and all life traumas. So this is the big piece of how does this all relate to our ancestral lineages and our ancestral imprints, right, and our ancestral issues. The repression of these gateways, right, the lower triangle, has inhibited the collective from fully tapping into life's master crystals. That's the master crystals within the body of the planet, as well as the master crystals that are dormant inside of our own human bodies, right? It's stagnated the ability to utilize this primordial crystalline magic, right, of Mother, Father, Earth. And of course, that was something that Iona totally comprehended 100%. And now we're in the golden frequency of regenerative consciousness, where we are freeing the resurrection of our divine feminine and masculine archetypes, energies, also crystals, right, in our bodies, as a new cosmic unity. The cosmic is with a capital K, right? Because this isn't just about, right, Jesus Christ. It's the cosmic Christ with a capital K. So that's a huge, massive field of energy. As you can see through this image, right, there's grids within grids that are connecting the earth grids with the celestial grids. And this human energy field that we are, we're the synapse, we're a bridge, or we're an arc between the celestial and the terrestrial, or the infinite and the finite. So this advanced tantric alchemy that this picture exemplifies is allowing us to remember how important we are, right? And if we really take the time to speak to the magic of these crystals, right, within the cells of our bodies, then we're going to start remembering what the ancient alchemical magic taught humanity in terms of this incredible interface that we are between pure vibration, or the language of vibration, and how that can integrate and incorporate itself into our atomic and subatomic and cellular structures. So like Andrew Harvey referenced it as organic light. It's not just light moving through our bodies, it's light that is partnering with our bodies, right? And so that goes into the DNA, that goes into the RNA, and these crystalline structures, right? It's kind of like a sleeping beauty inside of us, or like if our bodies were like Snow White, right? And we were waiting for true love's kiss. And so this cosmic love affair, right, is coming down and like waking up our organs and our blood and our bone and our tissues with that original essence, right? So this is very much an ancient esoteric concept. However, it is returning because it's like a necessary reminder of what we're really capable of, that we don't need to understand all of these metaphysical principles. This is really a gift of grace that's coming back with messengers like myself, right? And the other two women on this broadcast, that we can go back and refamiliarize ourselves with that ancestral wisdom, that it's not gone, right? These terms may sound like they're arcane, right? Which is like not well remembered. However, there's like a universal foundation that we can come back to, because we're not engaging with these principles for the first time. It's really like the returning of the ancient wisdom and figuring out for ourselves individually, how does that feel inside of my own body today, right? With what I've got going on now in my composition, quote unquote, in this timeline. And the curiosity, like being a divine child, like, okay, if my ancestors knew about this kind of Tantra, then maybe if I give myself with patience and curiosity, there's the willingness or giving myself permission to feel that arousal that can happen with my own spirit or with my own soul. It doesn't have to happen with another person, or it can happen with a rose garden, right? So we're just opening the doors, right, of what's even available if we realize that there is, like I said, this ancient foundation that's supporting us to bring it back and bring it back in a new way.
So I wanted to say a couple things before we move into the next slide. So what they found when they examined the bodies of these heavy meditators, like the monks and the Dalai Lamas, is that the crystals started forming in their third eye chakra, image of their skulls. So
Wow.
it actually gets activated when you intensely go into a spiritual practice and meditate. So you're literally physically manifesting consciousness. Now this is a magnificent image. I just love it. And a lot of people, even in the UFO field, have been trying to explain the grid within the grid within the grid, the morphogenic field. And so this shows that we're not a victim. If we work on ourselves, even though we think we're isolated, sitting alone on a mountain, we are feeding the grid. Grid feeds us. It's a big, eternal yin-yang circle of existence, of life, of energy, and we can bring about this extremely wonderful, powerful, good, conscious awakening of the entire planet, no matter what negative forces are trying to suppress us. and bring about the age of Aquarius and enlightenment and consciousness. It's not just a woo-woo thing. It's quantum physics. So that's what I have to say. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. We'll do a lot more. I'll comment. See, Teresa studied early on with Charles Muir. She met him before I did. When I moved here to the Temple Tantra, that's another name for my facility here. Charles was living here, and my husband, Dr. Sasha Lessin, and they were working together, taking groups to Mexico. And they worked primarily with couples, but then they had singles group, trying to use this as a physical manifestation of masculine and feminine to bring about this awakening into higher consciousness. So we had the school Tantra, which was a breakaway from Charles's source school Tantra. Anyway, a little background, and we ran that for like 20 years. It still exists, but because of COVID and shutdown, we kind of went, and we're going. So this is like the awakening, the blossoming, and the coming out of our shells after this contraction and introspection, which is good. It's all good in the divine plan, right? We contact and withdraw. We go outward. We go inward. We connect. We disconnect. Enough of me.
Yeah.
We are connecting the feminine together. This is nice that you found each other, and that she brought up or evoked Iona Miller. And I'm all about all the metaphysics and esoterics, is supernatural and all of that. So we'll have to get together some more, Dr. Grace.
Awesome.
Okay, next. I'm going to mute.
Yeah. Now this one, you've got to, I haven't really studied all this. I've been exposed to it. It's on full screen because I can hardly see it. Here we go.
There we go.
There we go. So I can see it better.
This is a map of a 12-sphere tree of life, and how it connects us, right, with the first 5 densities, right? And it's from another associate and colleague of mine, Ashiana Diana, who's also a walk-in. And so she went into 15th dimensional morphogenetic field physics. So I'm just going to read this through because it talks about how our personal architecture as individuals is connected to the planet's architecture, right? So just kind of like let it wash through, right? Kind of like a rain of mist, and just let yourself be curious, right, about these terms, because they're very quantum physicsy. So the Christ consciousness, that galactic Christ energy, is called the crystal Christ. And that's in reference to this original 12-sphere tree of life.
Oh, can you do that again?
Yes, the crystal Christ. And so this multi-dimensional reality is represented in this model that we call a universal time matrix. And that's the first 15 dimensions, how they're a love sandwich. They all go together. And how this interconnected 15 dimensions, all inside of this 12-sphere tree of life, the original one, right, before the veils started coming in, this impacts our entire planet. And it is how the individual human anatomy and planetary anatomy manifests upon and within the multi-dimensional layers of vibrational frequency as instructed by the core manifestation of this 12-tree grid, right? So probably about 10 to 12,000 years ago, right, this grid was available to us, but then it kind of went underground. And so this makes up a tri-wave blueprint, like I mentioned, right? With these 12 spheres, as this 12-sphere tree begins to rotate, right? It creates that tri-wave, which is the mother energy, the father energy, and then the twin energy, right? So it's a triveka. It's not the Vesica Pisces, right? In Celtic tradition, it's the triskel or the triquetra, right? Or the Trinity, right? But the Trinity is the mother, the father, and then their sacred union, right? The divine child is really the original state of wholeness. So this opens us up to the blueprint of the planetary gates, right? And this planetary gate, which is thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, right, is known as the Christos architecture, right? So again, that's cosmic Christ consciousness talking to us. And it allows for a synchronic phasing, right? Pulsations of the inner, the outer, and the in-between, right? So the inner, the outer, the in-between, the mother, the father, and the sacred union, right? The yin, the yang, and the yun, right? Original. And these currents of energy are to be, again, inhaled and exhaled, constantly circulating, right? Constantly in motion through the eternal life spark of creation throughout this entire organism. So on another day, we can show you the difference between a 10-sphere tree of life and the 12-sphere tree of life, which allows, right, a return to 0 point at every inhalation and exhalation of consciousness. And we're just not familiar with it, like I said, because it had to go underground into the mystery schools. Doesn't mean it disappeared. It just became less known, right? And other models, right, were adopted and then taught across many thousands of years. However, it's kind of like there was this promise that we would eventually bring back, right, these arcs of wisdom. And they started resurfacing really about 2007, went more public about 2015, and now it's going way more mainstream. If you look up these terms, right, Christal consciousness, you will see tons of teachers worldwide, which you didn't really see like a decade ago. So it's coming back.
Excellent. Next.
The next slide will give you a visual, right? Because a lot of people learn through image, right? And then you can see that that mandala, right, has the same fractal loop, right? It's spinning, and it's all interconnected through the center. So it's very different than the flower of life, right? This is the eternal life lotus. And because people sometimes dismiss what you would call supernatural wisdom, I present this through the language of morphogenetic field physics so it can get the respect that it's due. It's not to overwhelm people with terminology, but it's just allow people to have a healthy amount of respect that this is scientifically and mathematically proven, right? So from a scientist's perspective, right, this is the sourced spiral from Dr. Jerry Rivera, and he languaged it as the 36912, right? There's your new number here, is the quantum self-regeneration perpetual life lotus, right? That's that fabric of that 12 sphere, right? Rotating. And it's based in the crystal spiral or Christ code of morphogenetic unified field physics. And Jesus Christ was trained in these mechanics, right? It was just in the ancient mystery schools, and we just didn't necessarily discuss it with the general public. It doesn't mean that it's new information. This is ancient information, right? And so this crystal spiral and the mathematical sequence, which comes from within it, emerges directly from the 0 point, right? So Christ didn't die. He went to 0 point, right? He went to the void. So that middle of that mandala, that lotus flower, is going back to the void, right? Which is the central point of all union. So that's why we never die. That's why there's death and resurrection, right? Because it's going from the particle, right, into the wave. He just went into the wave. Christ was still alive in an energy wave. And then he came back to the particle, right, which is his body. So the crystal spiral, right, death and resurrection, perpetually retains a living, breathing, connecting, infinite source energy flow through the preservation of what came before, right? So that's why that 12 sphere always goes back to 0, right? It does not need the energy of the previous iteration, right, in the old models. And so it's completely regenerative, which expands through what we would call the multiplication of that infinite energy reservoir of mother, father, source energy. And so it's like you can speak about Tantra, right, in these beautiful like Vedic texts and other cultures where it's very poetic and very, mystical. And I would like to honor the more scientific, right? The more engineers and architects that also would like to see it presenced in the language of the sciences so that they don't feel left out, right? And then people can trust the mysticism more when they see that it's actually backed by technology. So that's why I always, right? Multifaceted presentations.
I love it.
Yeah.
Right.
Next.
It's interesting because that's the masculine tends to, on absolute, respect the scientific more than the spiritual. And so this is the attempt to bridge the gap and engage people, give them a connecting point so they go, oh, okay. What's this? Tell me more. You can either get the masculine through like sex or through science. And so, I mean, that's another polarity. It's really hard not to talk in terms of polarity, right? And so, like my husband always goes, oh, that's what do you call it? Anyway, he always called me out on my crap, right? Like, oh, you're right. I'm in you're in dualism. I go, yeah, well, I'm here on the earth and we're dualistic, and I love it when you call me out on it because we're really one, and we get stuck in dualism and self not self apparent other, and then when we're in the dualism process, we tend to demonize and project and judge, and so if we could come into this unity consciousness again, we'll go, oh, you're just me, you're my mirror. You actually are me. You're myself. What am I doing? I might as well like pluck out my eyes or chop off my foot. What am I doing? Right. So anyway, that's how I symbol it.
Yes.
Okay.
And Teresa's putting in this beautiful quote, if everybody wants to read it, from the Kundalini Yoga tradition, right? Of the partnership, right? Of the dissolution, right? Of the different roles, so that it always feels all inclusive, and so that it always feels embracing and respectful of everyone's orientation, right? We all come to this experience with our diversity of backgrounds, and all of those uniquenesses are honored and recognized and included and welcomed. So she spoke about it if you want to read it in the chat box.
Excellent.
Thank you for putting in that quote.
Thank you, Teresa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide. And then we'll have a lot of Q&A at the end.
Yes.
All right. Look at that.
So
wow.
My background is with the Kundalini Research Institute. So I was trained as a yogini, right, through the KRI organization. And so this is an image of the goddess of the planet. And when we see beautiful artwork like this, I've usually used the term planetary Kundalini. And so it's like I was doing these kriyas with the lineage of the golden line, and I really desired to put what you would call the more scientific research that they've done, right, for these mysteries of consciousness, so that there could be terminology or language so that I could talk about the fact that I felt the Kundalini of the whole planet, even though I was quote unquote technically dead. So I've had multiple near-death experiences, and I've had multiple walk-ins, and the presence of consciousness that really brought me back through all of it was the sentient intelligence of our entire planet. And in all of these end-of-life reviews, I was able to see that she has this Kundalini intelligence. And so I sat in council, right, with the soul of the whole planet, and she kind of gave me a Kundalini yoga class, right? And she said, I'd like you to come back, right, to your animate physical body so that I can partner on this with you, because if you stay in the spirit world, I can't accomplish my mission, and I need you here, right? And so she described to me this Kundalini network inside of her body. And I have different terminology that she gave me, right? And so I'll just read that little summary of this heart womb energy. And so the heart womb is that Kundalini vortex. And so there's like a Kundalini vortex of planetary, right? Life force inside of Gaia's body. And that's why she has another name. And in her 12th dimensional body, Gaia spoke to me as Aramatena. And so other mystics like, Lisa Renee or Ashiana Diana, they talk about Gaia's different, right, energy bodies. And so this was really a commitment to come back and help her come into her fullness, come into her vitality, right, as a Kundalini awakening for a whole planet. And so she spoke of these nodal apertures in her body, right, all these crystalline nodal apertures. And they are protected by many guardians. And so there is this intention to bring forth an ancient future, because there is no time, Hieros Gamos, or sacred marriage template for the whole planet. So that's like her job with her own sexual awakening as a planet. So that's what she asked me to come back and help her with, right? Because she's scheduled to go through this experience with origins, right? Or the ongoing moment of creation. And then through all of my walk-ins and all of my near-death experiences, she said that my body as a planet has an avatar matrix. So like Gaia Sophia Aramatena, she's like an avatar in the galactic Kundalini conversations. And so she has this future Earth blueprint. And because there is no time, she knows that she's going to go through this metamorphosis. Like think of the planet right now as a caterpillar, right? And as she goes through this sacred sexual awakening into her Kundalini, right, activation, that's how she gets access to her butterfly body. And so there's these heart wombs, right? Like wormholes or vortexes, and there's multiple numbers of them, right? These power spots all around the planet. And so she considered them like her chalice grails. Chalice grail, right, over in Asia, and chalice grail over in Russia, and chalice grail over in the Hawaiian Islands, and, chalice grail down in South America. So just like, Teresa's quote here, right, to practice Kundalini yoga and meditation with honor and respect of each other, now we're just adding her, right, as a member of our team. And so that's just taking the whole Kundalini yoga lineage, right, into its planetary application. So she referred to this Kundalini, right, system as her net of Indra, right, all these different crystalline nodal juncture points. And when she began communicating this to me, she basically said, I am the speaking tree of life for Gaia, like as the planet's highest self. So is that translating? Because I'm simplifying it.
Yeah, I had a couple things to add. I once had we were doing all these really extensive Tantra classes and private practices, and I went into this Kundalini orgasm. When you get going into a Kundalini orgasm, it's not like a typical sexual orgasm. It's like you're in the state of higher awareness and consciousness, and your chakras are all blown open, and you're traveling through the universe, and we were actually had a little bit of entheogens to enhance it, and I reached the point of identification with Gaia, that there was no separation. And what I'm getting when you're talking is like, it's like, to be, you are Gaia. We are all Gaia at the highest level of existence. And when you're communicating with her on that level, people when they channel or whatever, you had a near-death experience, you're actually reuniting with yourself, and your whole self is saying, no, you got to get back to Earth and your fractal self, because you're on a mission and you're not done yet. And I know it feels really groovy here, and you'd love to stay but if you did stay, you'd go, oh man, I was supposed to do that. I'm not done. I'm not finished. So
I'm not finished.
I'm not finished. And Teresa and I will do if you don't mind, we'll do a whole show on near-death experiences. We can do one on walk-ins and what all this means. But my awareness from this lifelong practice, I'm 69, and I've always been tantric, and always been, and of course I'm in this, scientific world, and we get repressed, and you can't do that, you can't say that, you can't think that, you can't, and the Christian world, and it's like all these blocks to expansiveness and reconnecting. So get back there and just be this little human, and your little small self is like, no, I'm really everything, and everything's me, right? So anyway,
And
it's
the joy.
block.
Yeah, because the advanced Kundalini wisdom is actually
Right.
shared amongst the original Christian mysticism.
Right,
So
and the
there's
whole
the
thing of
beauty of
Christian and going back
universality.
to Jesus and the Anunnaki. I mean, I have this nerd husband and a nerd friend, female friend, my girl from my BFF, and we go into all these levels because it's too narrow to just put yourself in a box. So to conclude, we are multidimensional beings who exist on all levels of consciousness, vibratory frequencies, dimensions, and we are simultaneously existing in many places. And we, in order to do life, we kind of focus our attention down here. And it's like, okay, when we say, I am, Janet Kira Lessin, and I'm Teresa J. Morris, and today I'm going to do today. But there is a part of us that has a total awareness. Don't be afraid if you access it, because that's part of the grand awakening of humanity. It's time. It's time at us. Okay, TD, I can see you. You have a question or comment. You want to say something?
She's putting in her quote, so we can bring her in. Yeah, so she can presence.
Okay. I'll let you. Can you see it? Anyway,
well, I can read it, but if Teresa wants to read it.
Teresa, can you hear us? I don't know. Maybe she can't hear us. All right, we'll catch up later. Let's
okay.
We'll go back and we can. How many slides are there? Do you know?
Well, we won't get to all of them.
Oh, this is great. Okay. Go ahead. I love this image.
So, next slide. So while you're doing the next slide, I'll read Teresa's quote. Yes. She says, to practice Kundalini yoga and meditation at your level of comfort, capacity, and self-care, it's important to follow this while respecting the needs of others, to have a student-teacher relationship that is both professional, respectful, and graceful. To practice Kundalini yoga is free of personal, sexual, financial, religious, or political pressure from your teacher. To respectfully ask questions and raise issues of concern, right, or curiosity or complaint openly and anonymously, and receive honest answers and fair consideration without fear. Yes, that's a beautiful way of embracing, right, what this collective realization actually constitutes.
Yes. So can you hear me now?
Yes.
I don't know why. I guess I was supposed to be silent till she read that, I guess.
Yes.
But yeah, we, all of us that study Kundalini yoga and many other breath work and many other yogas, including various, ones that we use now to help our seniors, because I'm working a lot with seniors now, is we all have our calling and election made sure based on the divine presence that we share as both male and female, yin yang, whatever you want to call it. But the thing is, now we're working in neuroscience to understand a lot of the crystallization of the complete cosmos. So I believe that you being here today is just what Janet and I needed to put us all together, the triune, and to really move forward in our Kundalini. And these are the 10, I don't know, maybe the numbers aren't showing, but we use those in various, there's many, many groups around the world practicing Kundalini yoga and teaching various essences in various schools, including joining the ancient mystery schools. So I just wanted to say that many of us are students and teachers, but anyone that has no idea, and I have many people that will listen to this because I have a whole new class of 6 women. I can take 6 to 8 at a time in my house, but Janet knows they're coming Tuesday. So these women will watch this because they follow my name, Teresa J. Morris, and then they will see this. So they're going to hear this for the first time. So wow. I wanted to put that out there for them to let people not to react in fear if they don't recognize with their ears or with their eyes and their senses that we are all students and teachers. And many of these ladies are nurses. So I wanted to present it with them, whether they may or may not be familiar with all the Kundalini Yoga expressions. But these are the disciplines, and this is like a little agreement we all have that teach Kundalini Yoga. So that's my little add to today's. And we're running out of time in the next 3 or 4 minutes, so we'll have to have her back, Janet, if you want to keep to an hour.
You're invited back. So, okay, back. Let's let Devi finish the slideshow, and we won't speak until the end. Okay, next.
Well,
no, you
basically let's just keep dovetailing, right? Because I really appreciate that point, because it's opening up the heart door, right, to explore other people's perspectives, and to realize that this Kundalini energy is such a vast reservoir, right, of vitality and infinite consciousness, that we're all going to have like a different journey or access to this universal common wellspring. And so the more that we presence that willingness and availability to hear another perspective that maybe isn't similar to our own, if we open those ears of our heart, right, we'll uncover that we're actually speaking the same language, even though we use different words or different concepts or different ideas, right? So we're not listening with our human ears, we're listening with the ears of our soul. And then that translates, right? And so in all humility, I'm not attached, right, to any of the jargon that I use. That's just my dialect. And mind you, I died very, very young, right? So I was opened up at age 4 to a Kundalini awakening as I was dying. So I speak like holographic language, but that's just because I died when I was 4 years old, right? And I've died multiple times. So, I apologize if I'm using language that's not familiar. However, there is that sacred opportunity to learn from another perspective, even if it's radical or different than our own. And I did study pre-med right at UCSD, so I started out in biophysics, if that makes sense, right?
Well, we should tell you we both had near-death experiences. I died as a child and then giving placenta previa childbirth. So she and I are both near-death experiencers.
Oh, that's right. I knew she was, but I didn't know you were too. Well, look at that.
Yeah.
Exciting.
We're all on the same journey.
And I had mine at 4, my first one at 4. That must be a magical year when you're 4.
I know, that's what I loved about your story. I was like, she died at age 4 too. Can you believe it? I was exactly 4 years old, 4 months and 4 days to the T. It was on Beltane, May 1st.
I don't have a date on it, and I'm trying to piece it together based on the weather and other things. But I think it was summer of 58, so I turned 4 in February. So might have been 4. I don't know. There's no way of finding that out because all these people are dead unless I go over there and talk to them.
Right.
Which is another story. Okay.
So speaking of expanding stories, right? Here is an image, right, of looking at the culture of our planet through a cosmic lens. And so when I had my first near-death experience, I met the star ancestors. And when I was in this ancestral council, I was able to see that I related to what was known as the Star of Bethlehem on the planet as Starship Bethlehem or Mothership Bethlehem, right? And then I went looking for some of the artists that are aware of that same cosmic realization. And so you'll see on the right side, right, that the magi or the wise men, they're traveling and they're following, right, the Mothership Bethlehem or Starship Bethlehem, right, because it includes that cosmic lexicon, right, of our expanded relations. Now, the Native Americans, right, they relate to their star grandmothers and their star grandfathers. So that's normal for indigenous culture. But that isn't necessarily familiar, right, with some of the other traditions on the planet. And so as you can see, right, that huge, right, radiant luminosity in the sky, that the background of reimagining the ways in which divinity comes into form is realizing that maybe a lot of our avatars, right, that have come to this planet are celestial in origins. So for me, the many Star Nations ancestors are supporting humanity with a radical reimagining of our celestial heritage. With many walk-ins and hybrids like myself, I'm not just a walk-in, I'm also a hybrid, so I have galactic DNA, are coming to support this entire planet through her greater birthing process into universal citizenship, right? So that Christ consciousness is both human, right, and celestial, right? Both
Right.
human and galactic, and that we're partnering together for the evolution of consciousness, right, across all eternity. So it's a huge diversity. And I realized that most of the tantric wisdom that I was able to connect with was only accessible to me through ancestral healing. And in order to heal the deep wounds, right, of my maternal and paternal, right, unfinished business in the family line, meant that I needed to receive support and acceptance of assistance from other expanded family trees, shall we say.
Mhm.
So if you go to the next slide, I'll show you, right, another visual for that Christ spiral energy.
Beautiful.
And so this is different than the Fibonacci, right, spiral. This is the crystal spiral, and it's that base 12 fractal. And so basically, every single time that I died, I went back into this 12 sphere tree of life in order to be able to reconnect with another fractal or aspect of my highest self. Some people call it the oversoul, right? And so it was like I was only able to bring so much of my multidimensional consciousness down into my human body because Kundalini is a very powerful, right, force. And my vulnerabilities, right, because death is kind of traumatic, could only handle so much voltage, right, at my developmental stages of growth and development. So like I died at age 4, and then I, died again at age 10, and then I had all these close brushes with death, right? So it was like in Native American culture, they basically call it a threshold or a rite of passage. And so
Right.
when I talk about having 5 walk-ins, I went through 5 major, right, meltdown of the old caterpillar, right, human identity, right, the shamanic egoic death, loss of total identity construct, and having to surrender into that crystal spiral, which I call my lotus rose. And that's because it's both Eastern and Western mysticism, right? The Order of the Holy Rose, Western culture, the Order of the Holy Lotus, Eastern culture. And so what I discovered was I had all these nice little stargates that were stored inside of me, and yet it wasn't going to be safe for me to unpack that consciousness if I didn't heal my mother wound and if I didn't heal my father wound, right? And so that's when
Right.
that life force energy got traumatized, right? Maybe 29 generations ago on my father's side, or maybe, 159 generations ago on my mother's side, because we've had a lot of spiritual persecution, right? A lot of religious wars, a lot of conflict, a lot of separation. They're called the ancient aggression templates. And so we're evolving out of separation consciousness and back into unity consciousness. And yet a lot of the human ancestors were just creamed, right? Like every form of trauma imaginable, because we've had, world wars, again and again and again and again across multiple continents. And that creates what you would call the ravages of war in the cellular memory. And so, if you have family members that are fighting each other, right, then that schism, right, or that soul split can show up many generations down the road. And so that will probably be a discussion, right, for another show, because I want to be respectful of our time. And so,
I know,
probably right here is a good pregnant point to say pause, right? We can do the second part of the slideshow.
Right
Yeah,
on the
another
word
day.
Stargate. I
Let
like
me just
that word
add something to
Stargate.
that. let me just add something to that. So I've been
Yeah.
doing my ancestral work, and basically, when you go back around the year 1000, every human being alive today is related to each other 2.5 times over, because the population wasn't sufficient for the amount of. If you go back, there's a point where we have a million grandparents. So you go, if you just follow up your both sides of your tree, your masculine and feminine, you find your grandparents over and over, and you get a point where it's a collapse in the tree, and your grandmother is your aunt, is your cousin, and your grandfather is your uncle, is your cousin, and
Yeah.
that happens over and over again because there's so many people on the planet. But that DNA is in each and every one of us, and every generation has horrendous wounds. There
Yeah.
were times where my grandfather killed my grandmother, and
Yes.
they were historical figures. I could tell you who they are, like Bloody Mary, and there was this guy that was a Puritan, and she burned him, and it's like, oh my God! Then I reached a point where my grandmother and grandfather, they killed each other, but one of their
Yes.
children survived. That's how I'm here, because if any one of them had not succeeded in procreating, and then they procreated, I would not be me. So when you do this work, you go, this is so profound, and it really illustrates it scientifically, right? It's something you can track down and prove, and look at all the historical records that everybody that ever was alive. Some of it got maintained and preserved through, like, the Akashic records, through the Tibetans, or the Crusades. A lot of that stuff got brought back, and they're hidden in the castles over in Europe. They've got dungeons with these records and all the artifacts, and it's like, so wow. So doing this ancestral work, we call it cultural conditioning, family of origin programming, religious and cultural, and doing your deprogramming and reprogramming individually and then collectively. That's how we ascend and get conscious as an entire species. And if we don't, it's like shit or get off pot time. We don't do this soon, our planet's going to be unsustainable. It's not sustainable. If anybody objectively looks at this system like, this is not sustainable. Hello, time to
Yes.
get conscious. And so I'm gonna stop there. Teresa, do you have any final contributions? And then we'll give it back.
Well, I'd just like to. Can you hear me? Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. I'd just like to mention, you mentioned some names in there, or you evoked another one of us, I guess, as a female array in 3D, but Ashiana, Dashiana, Dakini, Spiritual Enlightenment. You want to mention that again, just so we'll know? You mentioned, is that a friend of yours? Because there are many Ashiana Dashanas, and I know one also that's also passed, like Iona Miller.
She
one
started
are you
the MCEO, Melchizedek Cloister, Emerald Order, Ashiana Diana, who wrote Voyagers. And so she is a walk-in out of Florida, and she has brought through that 15th dimensional morphogenetic field physics with expert mastery. And she started Kelontic science. So that Ashiana is associated. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. I'd like to know how we can contact that, because one of my girls that does that energy on the planet has passed in our group in Hawaii, and lived in California as well. So
perfect. Well, I did
share
an event page, right? So on Facebook, with today's date for Janet's Aquarian Radio, with the theme of Gaia's Hieros, Gamos, and Planetary Tantra, I will put in, right, those links so that people can go to the different source materials, right, and references that I've included in this presentation.
So you use Facebook then? A lot of people do for marketing purposes and social media. I'm not a big go find on Facebook. I'm more of a YouTube fan. So but I'll follow you here on YouTube. I have like 20 channels or so.
Right.
But it's good that Janet is using social media as well. So kudos to both of you ladies.
Yeah.
And Michael Nye from Australia also said hi to us. So we have friends over from down under that were joining us on the broadcast as well. And he put his little Beyond Being Human link in. You saw that. I was referencing the significant Star Nations ancestral healing that we did with that organization. So I'm very much a kaleidoscope, right?
Good.
Of multiple, right? Resources.
Yay.
I believe that it takes all of us, right, to crack the code, so to speak.
It does. All of us, we meet each other, and look how much we had in common with people on the planet already, names in the 3D world. Now, Janet just wants to mention, if you don't mind, really quick, I love this new book, folks. I haven't got it yet. But she does beautiful artwork, and she does beautiful publishing, and I am also a publisher. So, folks, together we do books. I'm on Lulu and Amazon. If you see, I'm an author. But Janet doesn't like to do commercials, so I'll just do a quickie
this
for
is my
her.
commercial, and I'm just going to say real quick, Dr. Lessin, because my husband is 82 and I'm 69, and I never know when it's my last day.
His last breath.
When's my? I have seen so many people die in the last 3 years. It's shocking.
Right.
It is shocking.
They're all passing over.
They're all crossing over. So
we're all going there.
We have Sasha and I have written 5 books on There's actually another book on Tantra, and The Dance of Souls was an early attempt at my autobiography, and then we did 5 on. We always research the Anunnaki. That's, I think, at the highest level. I am this woman here, which is Nima. So it's really kind of, how can I say that? But I think I'm a fractal of Nima. I don't think it's a reincarnation. I think that there are other Nimas out there on the earth that the gods and goddesses are incarnating with and a soul that's really advanced can send a fractal down. They don't have to send their whole soul to only one incarnation. So I think what we're encountering is fractal, because I've identified with her. And this is the first of 2 books on Nima. I just got that published. I'm really proud of myself. My goal was to do before my birthday, and my birthday was February 6th. So I got that out. And then last year I started this Dragon at the End of Time, because I think that the original split besides man and woman was Draco and Lyran, humanoids and Plutonians, and that seems to be one of the cosmic battles, which will go into a future thing. So I started this series, and Genesis, of course, the first, and I'm going to do 1 for each decade, and I'm pulling it all together because I'm a nerd and I'm crazy. I'm sitting there and I write every day. I write. So call me nuts. I don't care. And this is this is another
this
one.
This is a pretty one.
I got this up on Kindle, and they rejected me because of something. So I've got to go back. But at least this is up on Kindle now. This was like so I have 1 each year. So this was 2021. The other one, this one was 2022, and then the previous one with them was 2020.
Maybe we'll see them in movies someday. These are beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But we think they'll be movies.
Now, Nin Harsog is Nimble when she grows up. Her son gives her a castle on the mountain, and she becomes a peacemaker, the divine feminine, and her nieces Inanna, who was the tantric master. Anyway, they get into a war between the masculine and feminine here on the earth, and she's the peacemaker, and she's the reason why we're here. We would not be here if it wasn't for Nima, but of course, all the men over all the centuries are taking credit for us being here. So this is, I'm going to redo this graphic, but this is our show, Aquarian Radio. I'm moving it into Aquarian media. I've got to get a new graphic design. I love your graphics, Devi, that you do. Sasha has, his main site is ankyspeaks.com, and it's incredible free education. He studies with so many people. He's 60, he was 82. He's going to be 83 this year. And, but Zechariah said to him, Dr. Lessin, please create an education program. And so he has all the stuff for free. You can spend your whole life reading what Dr. Lessin writes every single day of his life. He contributes to this. And then this is my latest Dragon at the End of Time. So I'm tracking Dragon Legacy So we are Dracos, we are Anunnaki, we are all these different species. Anyway, that's going to come out in the future show. So thank you for
Yes.
joining us. Anybody else want that?
Maybe we can have a follow-up
Okay.
next Saturday.
Well, I'd
I
love
had
to
fun.
do
Did
that.
you
And if
have fun, everybody?
anybody
I hope so.
has any questions, right, you can find me over at the divineunionfoundation.org or divineunionacademy.com. And so really what we're looking at is the mystery of sacred union, because our consciousness
Right.
did go into what you would call stark contrast, right? So that's like the out breath. And literally, I am also dragon. That's the only reason why I survived all of my near-death experiences.
Yes.
And this kind of sounds trippy, is that it was the dragon fire of my soul that kept me alive when I should have humanly died, right? So this mystery of consciousness, right, that I'm part human, part dragon, right, part celestial, and the mysteries, like we said, of the primordial mother and the primordial father, and that there were these epic battles in family systems, right? Murders inside of family systems, conflicts, large scale conflicts on the planet, right? Between oppositional energies. And Tantra is that love glue, right? It's like we've done every
Yes.
version of separation. And so, how on earth do we heal, right? Both the inner conflict and the external conflict, so we can find the miracle, right, of the restoration of our wholeness. And it's not naive, because we have known stark polarity, so we appreciate that orgasmic gift of grace. So I'm all about, the law of grace transcends the laws of karma, because these are ancestral karmic imprints. So as we get together again, we'll talk about how do you purify ancestral karmic imprints, not just your soul karmic imprints, as well as archetypal karmic imprints, and then literally like walk into, right, the quantum
Walk-ins,
unified field.
hybrids. Yes, that will help my groups. I have many on social media on Facebook. So you're welcome to join us, Dr. Grace. And we also, Janet and I, support the UAP Associates, all the UFO associations, and we have UFO Secret Space, Alien Contact Org, and these can fit into the identifying that many people are doing now in the UFO industry and alien contact with ET hybrids and the star nations, which I understand you have a good foothold in the star nations as well. So let's talk about all that in the future with Janet. Janet, if you'll allow us to, I just need someone to tell me when to show up.
Well, we're gonna end this because we're at 1 hour 22. And we told we were gonna do 1 hour. So anyway, it's okay. I forgive us. But we can talk.
We can do an hour and 30 minutes. We can do 90 minutes. There's 3 of us. 30 minutes.
To be
so
continued.
To be continued. So we save. I mean, we could probably do this for years, but
we can do 30 minutes a piece in the future, or 90 minutes. We could just plan it that way. That's the way Dr. Richard Allen Miller does it.
We'll talk all night. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so
Aloha.
much for doing this. We did. Aloha.